Hello, this is Simon Brew. I'm the editor of Film Stories magazine, and a very warm welcome to a special episode of the Film Stories podcast.
Come with me.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
And movies that had stories.
That the story just sucks them in.
This is just the beginning.
Stories. We would be honored if you would join us.
Hello, and a very warm welcome to Film Stories with Simon Brew. I am Simon Brew, as always, there's absolutely everything you need to know about me. The aim of the podcast, though, well, it's given away in the title. I'm here to talk of the stories of films, and I tend to talk about development stories, production stories, marketing stories, release stories, all those ingredients, really, that go towards making the films that we know and love. Just that, the films that we know and love. What you've happened upon here, though, is one of my occasional special episodes of the podcast where I bring in a filmmaker to talk about either their body of work or their latest release. And in this particular case, I'm delighted to be joined by director Marc Forster. Now, the majority of the chat is about his latest film, A Man Called Otto, starring Tom Hanks, that hits UK cinemas on Friday the 6th of January 2023. We also touch on one or two other things in the conversation. You'll hear us talk about Hal Ashby's wonderful film Being There, starring Peter Sellers, and just in case you need that, just as a setup for where that particular bit of the conversation goes. We also talk about another of Marc Forster's movies, Stranger Than Fiction, which I hugely advise you to seek out, track down and watch. It really is a bit of a treat. We brush across one or two other bits and bobs as well, but I think most of that is fairly self-explanatory in the conversation. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you a clip from the trailer for A Man Called Otto, and then we're going to go straight into my conversation with Marc Forster after that. Here it comes.
Hey, Otto!
No. Don't you dare let that little red dog piss on my walkway again.
Ignore him, Print. He has no idea who's doing that.
Well, it was one of you. Get out of here. You cannot use this road without a permit.
Have a nice day, sir.
You know, the other guys don't do this, the guys with the white trucks. How come it's always you brown guys? And I don't mean that racially.
I'm sorry you didn't get him here earlier.
The whole neighborhood is falling apart these days.
No, stop! Oh my God. Give me the keys.
Hello.
Hello.
What's your name?
Otto.
Otto?
O-T-T-O.
I'm Abby. O-T-T-O.
So that was a clip from A Man Called Otto. I'm delighted to be joined by the director of that film, Marc Forster, who's with me now for a Film Stories podcast special. Hello, Marc Forster. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me, Simon.
It's an absolute pleasure. I've decided I'm just trying to work out the chronology of your life at the moment, because I think you've done a bit of a Steven Spielberg here. So if I've got this right, Spielberg, when he was making Ready Player One, had shot that film and then made the post straight afterwards, and then the post was released before Ready Player One. So I'm conscious you're entwined in a couple of films at the moment. So you're also directing the new Wonder film, Whitebird, and I'm just wondering, did you shoot that one first and then you've come to this second? Because A Man Called Otto seemed to come together very quickly in the end.
Yeah, that's correct. We shot Whitebird in Prague, just at the beginning of COVID, and then straight went into post and then started prep on Otto, and then shot Otto, and I delivered Whitebird in August. But it's coming out next year in September, and this one snuck in right after and is coming out before. Correct.
So how does your brain deal with the overlap with that? Is that quite nice that you can duck out one project into another?
I must say I underestimated it a little bit because I must say it definitely affects you, and it's quite exhausting. I definitely need a couple of weeks off.
And do you get a couple of weeks off after this? Are they giving you nice coffee? Excellent.
Exactly.
The thing with A Man Called Otto is the timeline. I've been looking back through your career, and I think the only thing that's gone this fast that I can see is something like Quantum of Solace. That we first got the news that you were on board this film in January of this year. I presume you were on slightly before. And 11 months later, we're here talking about it. And I just wonder if you can kind of compress that experience a bit of just how quickly this one's gone from start to finish for you.
I mean, we all, to be honest, met 4 years ago, Christmas 4 years ago at Tom's Hanks's office in Santa Monica. It was David McGee, who I worked with on Finding Neverland together, who wrote the adaptation, and then Rita and Tom and Frederick and my creative partner Renee Wolf. So we all met together and decided to make this movie together and spoke about it creatively, and it was all a very good overlap, and then we basically, David wrote a first draft, and that turned out really well. And then we kept on working on it together, and then we announced it like 11 months ago, because before we just kept it under the radar until we all felt like we want to make the movie, and it felt right.
So that's a lovely way to do it. This one then is a lot more in your control than perhaps some that all of you have been involved with before have been.
Yes, it also puts less pressure on you, because if everybody knows you're working on something, they constantly ask you, "Oh, how is it going? How is it going?" And then, and if you have issues and problems, then you try looking for excuses. And this way, we all felt really good about the script. Really felt this is the movie we're going to make. And then when the announcement came out, that we basically were already in pre-production.
Yeah, and I'm from reading about how you put this film together, from the outside looking in, this feels like it was put together almost as an independent movie.
That's correct, yeah.
And again, was that conscious? Was that because you've had ups and downs with studios in the past? But was it? I mean, the whole idea of this film under the radar, independently funded, does that bring different pressures, or is that just a more relaxing way to make a film, if such a thing exists?
I mean, it creatively, it's definitely more relaxing. What makes it, what creates a little pressure, that ultimately still making the movie for a quite healthy budget, and you have to make sure that you can sell the movie to a studio, which we then went to Berlin, basically 10 months ago, and sold the movie there, and ultimately made a deal with Sony. And because we felt that would be the right partner, right distributor for this film, and also they saw the film as a theatrical release, which excited us, and we felt the film should be experienced as a theatrical release, because it's about people coming together, and you cry and you laugh all together in the theater versus just watching it at home alone. So that all was the right fit, but the pressure comes from, if we wouldn't have sold it in Berlin, then obviously the financier would have gotten much more nervous.
But you knew by the point you took it to Berlin to sell the film what you had, presumably. I mean, you were comfortable and confident with what you put together.
Absolutely. I mean, you have a book that almost sold 10 million copies worldwide. Man Called Otto.
Yeah, of course.
And then you had Tom Hanks starring in it, myself directing it, and you had a script by David McGee that was very, very strong. So I think the package as a whole was very appealing, I think, for a lot of buyers.
And do you enjoy that side of the business? Do you enjoy the putting the film out and selling it, or is your happy place on the set or in the edit suite? Where are you at your happiest?
I think the happiest, I must say, I'm probably on the set, and I just love, especially if you're working with incredible actors, like someone like Tom Hanks, who is just truthfully, I think, one of the greatest artists, and he's one of the greatest actors alive, and he's just so special and so joyful to work with. So it's every day you come to set and you just explore something, and you find something new, and you're doing a story that makes, again, what the great thing is about the silver lining here is about this movie is that it has humor, but it also has the darkness. So it's finding that balance and finding that by day to day, and also in the editing room. But I think my most happy place is on set, especially working with great actors, and also Mariana Trevino. The whole ensemble cast was really great.
I was going to ask you about this, because one of the toughest things I keep being told by filmmakers, I'm from the outside looking in, I find what you all do fascinating, is managing tone and capturing tone. And it's such a tightrope you successfully walk with this film. But I'm curious how the tone varied, both in that 4 years while you were putting it together, then on set, and then in the edit room. Was it fairly constant throughout, or were there moments of just you wobbled a little bit on it?
It's pretty constant throughout, because I had a clear vision of what I wanted to do, and David did that, achieved it in the script already, and I just wanted to make sure that that on set, how I directed, that I constantly have this sort of balance between drama and comedy, and then ultimately, obviously, in the editing room, you start massaging it, but it's key for me here because you have this sort of secondary storyline, which are the flashbacks, which you're going back into this nostalgia of Otto remembering when he was younger, and you make sure that you don't lose sort of the connection to the present day Otto. It's always with flashbacks, that you don't go suddenly into this other storyline and you get lost in it, and then when you come back, it will take you a while to adjust, or you lost your audience. So it's this thin line of massaging comedy, drama, and sort of the flashbacks all at once, which wasn't easy to do. I feel like it looks easy at the end of the movie, but
it looks really easy from where I sit. It looks utterly seamless. I mean, congratulations to you on it.
Thank you.
I mean, but are you the kind of filmmaker on set who can see the edit room? Because I've had different answers from directors. Are you fairly confident when you look at the monitor that you've got 90% of what you want, for instance, when you go into the edit suite?
Yeah, I'm usually cutting my head. As I'm shooting, and normally, but with most movies, it's like pretty much all of them. I except of one, I only had like 1 or 2 pickup days.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm picking up something small here and there, and that's pretty much it. I try to leave when I finish shooting the movie with all the footage I need.
Do you go with the mantra? I badly paraphrase it. Do you go with the mantra of Sidney Lumet that it's in the preparation and it's in rehearsal, and you make all your mistakes before you get to the set?
Exactly. I think you really make the movie in preparation, and some of the more either if it's action or more difficult CGI scenes, I storyboard, and the rest I shot list very, 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 very well. So, but most of it's done all in preparation.
You talked there about Tom Hanks, the actor. And of course, I mean, through his Playtime company, this is the latest film that he's produced as well, along with Rita Wilson and Gary
Gutzman.
Gary Gutzman, thank you very much. But what's the producer side of that relationship like? Because you talked about not wanting to upset financiers and making sure everyone's happy with it. But the producer of the film is looking at you on the monitor as well, or at least one of the producers. And I'm just curious, what's the difference between the relationship between you and him, the actor, and you and him, the producer?
Tom is a very genuine, lovely, kind human being. He's known as the nicest man in Hollywood, and that's really true. That he's just truly a wonderful person, a wonderful collaborator, and there's no ego. And ultimately, once we started working together, there was an amount of trust from both of us.
Yeah.
And once that happened, and that trust is built, you go on this journey together, and it's just it's just very, very. It was a very positive experience for me and I believe for him. And I think I would love to work with him again because it was so good. And if you find like-minded people with similar sensibilities, you want to actually work with them again.
And so it sounds like a clickbait question, and it's really not. I promise you that. But I'm just curious. So where does the creative friction come in? Because the two of you are strong storytellers, and I can't imagine you're 100% aligned on absolutely everything. So how do you manage the moments where you slightly disagree on it? That sounds like I'm trying to generate a fight, and I'm really not. I'm just
to be honest, I had often with actors. And I can be very open about it. The other movies, sometimes you have a day where you disagree. There wasn't one day Tom and I did not agree on something. We were literally aligned all the way through, even in the edit. And I think, and I never had that. That's why I think I love the experience so much, because I never had such a symbiotic relationship with an actor. And usually, there's always a day or here where you find a different point of view, but that never happened with us. So this was a some true blessing, but I wish I could tell you a story that
it's right. There was
would be more would be more dramatic, but there isn't one.
I love the fact that you would have had the opportunity to offend 3 members of the Hanks family in one go if there had been a particularly bad day on it. I mean, a proper family production from their point of view. But can I talk about someone else in your cast? Because you mentioned her just before, and I'd not seen her work before, and I think it's right I acknowledge just what an extraordinary performance she gives. I think you pronounce it Mariana Trevino. Is that correct?
Yes, Mariana Trevino.
So can you introduce her to us and when she came on your radar and sort of when you knew?
So Mariana Trevino is she had a big career in Mexico, and she's very, very respected there and beloved. And my casting director one day called me up at the beginning, and as we started to cast, and said, "Look, check out your inbox for the roles of Marisol." So I went to my inbox, popped it up, and I just saw one actress in it. And so I called her up. I said, "Look, I only received one actress here. Can you send me the rest?" I said, no, just check out that one actress.
Yeah.
So I clicked it open, and it's Mariana in a hotel room in Spain, and she's by herself, and she has an iPhone literally like this, and she's talking into the iPhone by herself. And normally when you have an actor, you read lines, have someone across who reads lines with you. But she basically has no one to read the lines with. So she's by herself, and she starts talking to imaginary characters of Otto and Tommy and herself. And it's a scene where she puts the foot in the door. So she talks to all 3 of them, takes some of their lines, and does her own lines and plays these other characters. And at the beginning, I was slightly confused. And I said, what's she doing? She's playing all the roles at once. And I suddenly realized how genius she is and brilliant. And ultimately, I just fell in love with her. And I was laughing and crying. And one scene after the next, she just put down as in these auditions from dramatic to comedy. And they said, "I don't need to see anybody else. This is it." And when you see the movie Mariana, it's very hard because Tom Hanks is so brilliant to stand up and literally play off one another. And she does that so brilliantly and lovely. It was very, very powerful.
So when you first started making films, when you were doing things like Loungers and everything put together, would you have had that creative confidence to look at one audition and just know? Is this something that's come with experience, or has that always been there for you?
No, that came, I think, over the years slowly. But ultimately, you as a filmmaker, there's a certain thing you have to trust your intuition and your gut. And if you feel someone is right, and you feel that person is really fits your vision and speaks the truth and is in the moment, then you just have to go with it. You can't question it.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. But I think in this case, it was just so convincing that there was no question.
I mean, it's interesting because it sounds to me like the kind of decision you would either make right at the start of your career or 20, 30 years in, and in the middle bit where everyone's telling you you're wrong and you sort of doubt yourself an awful lot. Can you relate to that kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think, at the beginning of your career, you're naive and you just go with your gut. And then suddenly, a couple of movies in, you start questioning everything and questioning yourself. And ultimately, because you're not under the radar anymore, people are watching more what you're doing, then and some movies work and some don't. And then you realize that not every movie you do can be beloved by everyone. So sometimes you fail and sometimes you succeed. And you're looking, what I think is key as an artist in general, is like when you look at Silicon Valley, it's based on failure. And I think it's built on failures. And I think oneself to fail as an artist, as in any sense, is so important because you can truly become better or grow as a filmmaker. So constantly when a movie didn't work, I'm questioning why didn't it work and why, and then you look at another movie that worked. But it's constantly, for me in my life where I'm at right now, I made these 2 movies back to back, Whitebird and Otto, and I felt both of them, there was a symbiotic relationship in the process of making those movies and were some of the best experiences of my life. And then I feel like that ultimately that's still what I enjoyed so much, but also I grew as a filmmaker. And I think constantly growing as an artist and breaking down your ego is really what it comes down to.
But was there a point, because I don't think it's a secret that you've had films that were in the crosshairs before a little bit and had an awful lot of attention on you. Did you come close to falling out of love with it at any point? Or have you always managed to retain a love of what you do?
No,
so it's the human story that interests me. I'm not trying to stir it.
No, I think, I think it's like having kids. Some kids are really easy, and some have a real troublesome, have a troubled youth. They have an issue with drugs and alcohol and whatever, and you try to steer them away from it and try to make sure they're on a positive, healthy path. And some of them keep on coming back into trouble. You're getting back into trouble, and you're trying to sort it out. So I think that's just how life is. And these movies have have a lot of eccentric personalities around often. It's like managing personality is a part of it. Yeah. And sometimes, it's interesting. There's a device you use in film. It's when you have these motion control cameras. And,
right, okay.
And sometimes the camera does the exact same thing, but what's in front of the camera is not necessarily motion controlled. So
yeah, I hear that.
That's still, because otherwise one has to do animation. But it's still, you want to. You go on this journey and you want to try to create magic, entertainment. You want to move people, and all these in the storytelling process. And sometimes you can be as prepared with clear vision, but sometimes things occur that steer in another direction, and you just have to be prepared and deal with it. These are things you can't control, and that's part of filmmaking.
I mean, one of the things I wrote in my notes after watching the film, which I enjoyed enormously, was I wish Marc Forster had the chance to direct a Peter Sellers movie, because I'd love to see what that would look like, just working with such an actor of that range.
I being there by Hal Ashby.
That's exactly the one I was thinking of. Yeah,
one of my favorite movies of all time.
Likewise, very much with that in mind. I love that ending. I love that film enormously.
Yeah, same here. And obviously, his collaboration with Kubrick worked out well. I love that movie as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got here. I just want to touch on Tom Hanks just one more time, because I'm trying to work out when was the last time I saw him in a role I would consider comedic. And obviously comedy has gone throughout his career, but I mean, you seem to have an awful lot of fun balancing just the wry humor and cranky Tom Hanks at the same time, and almost going back in one way and forward in the other.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about it is Tom plays physical comedy as well.
Yeah.
As well. I mean, there's this Chaplin-esque quality sometimes about him in the way he walks and the way he moves. And it's really, obviously in the 80s, he did a lot of comedies with like Big and Splash and all these movies. But then he became a very dramatic actor, a lot of dramatic roles. But I think it's sort of a combination of both here, of his dramatic and comedic skills, which is just really, really lovely to see. And I think, a lot of people who watch the movie, it seems to me when I've seen these audiences, they don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And then they suddenly expect themselves being emotionally caught up in the movie as a surprise.
Yeah. I don't watch trailers or anything now. I come to things absolutely cold. So I had no idea what to expect at all. And I think that really helps and really works for it.
Oh, that's fantastic! I love that.
Yeah, it makes my job incredibly difficult, but there we go. I don't know if you've seen the press notes for this, but you are described. I love this description of you. Your career, it says, evaded categorization. And I just think, what a lovely line for a filmmaker.
I love that.
Isn't that great?
Yeah,
So first of all, I want to congratulate you on evading categorization, which, given the scale of what you've done over the years, is a real achievement and a half. But also, part of the thing with this podcast is getting to the human story and hopefully going to people who are trying to break in, who are trying to find self-belief as a filmmaker. So can I just ask you, because I mean, the basic bio stuff of you just has this line that you moved to New York when you were 20. to get into film and to study film. But it's just like that line seems to be doing an awful lot of work. And I'm just wondering, what was the jump? What was the catalyst for the jump that you made, and when you knew?
I knew that I wanted to be a filmmaker when I was in my teens. And I applied to all sorts of film schools in Europe because I grew up in Switzerland. So it was film schools in Paris, London, Germany. And then I thought, okay, let's apply to NYU as well.
Yeah.
But I thought, I probably couldn't go there because my parents didn't have the financial means to pay for it. So then suddenly I got rejected from all the European film schools except New York.
Really?
Yes, so that's the only film school I got accepted in. So I said, okay, I wanted to make films, so then I have to find the money. So I found the money, and that's the reason I went to New York. If I probably would been accepted at in Paris or London or Europe, then I would have stayed. But because of it, I moved to New York and went to Tisch and NYU, New York University, and went to film school there. That's how it happened. And once I was in New York in the 90s, I realized that the independent film scene at that time in the 90s in New York was very New York centric. There were not a lot of immigrants who were making movies.
Interesting.
All there was obviously the older generation like Scorsese, Woody Allen, and so on. But then there were younger generation like Ed Burns and so on who just rise to make movies to prominence. And I realized I have to move to Los Angeles because they were very open, has a history, obviously, of great European filmmakers coming to LA early on in early days of the 20th century and were able to make movies. So I thought, okay, I have to move to Los Angeles and try to make movies there.
Ed Byrne gave one of the best independent film schools basically on a DVD commentary to, I think it was Sidewalks of New York. And he's just talking about, I shot this door. I was just like, did you get permission? No, I just pointed my camera and hoped they wouldn't chase me away. And it's just like that guerrilla aspect to it. It was incredible. But you've moved by yourself. So when you took that jump to New York, you just left absolutely everything behind and just went in with 2 feet. I'm just trying to work out how.
Yeah, that's correct. I finished my sort
That's
of
incredible though.
I guess A levels or O levels here in England, and then and went to New York, and my English wasn't that great either. So first I had to take some English classes too, and that when I started making movies, these short movies there, everybody wrote their little dialogues and shot these little shorts, and because I couldn't write English really because I couldn't speak English much, all my films were in silence. So I really learned at that time already to really tell stories with not much exposition or dialogue, and it's more showing the internal life of a character, or just through a visual story or acting what would happen and the emotional journey of the character. And then later when I added dialogue, I realized it helped me a lot to even when you look at Otto, a lot of moments where Tom is acting by himself alone in silence, and it's just these little moments of you have a great actor like Tom who obviously can express so much with very little. But I think that's the time when I really got sort of passionate about metaphors and that you can say visually just a lot in a story without exposition or saying to an audience what they need to think or what they need to feel.
And was that something too that contributed to your patience? Because there's moments in A Man Called Otto where you could have rushed the camera around, or at least gone about. I've seen films, in theory, slower dramatic films where the camera is moving a lot faster, but you're very, very deliberate in how slow you go sometimes. Did that come from that period as well?
Yes, it does, and I wanted to show in case of Otto when he was alone, also the void of Sonia, of his wife missing from his life. So I wanted to slow that down, that you really feel the loneliness and the void of her presence not being there. But I've always feel ultimately. I grew up in Switzerland, which is also an emotional repressed society. So where people don't express their emotions, it's more about reading people. And I think reading, if you have great actors, to read them gives you mystery and tension versus, I love great dialogue, don't get me wrong. The dialogue between Mariana and Tom at the doors is is hysterical, but but I think in the unspoken moments, I think you can really identify with the character if you do it right.
And the dynamic isn't in words in that, is it? It's a foot goes in the door, because that was the bit that really, I don't want to go spoilery for those who've not seen the film, but the simple motif of a foot just stopping the door shutting is a really abrupt turn, I felt, in the film.
Yes, and it shows her character also, of her persistency, and that's what I love about her character, Marisol's character, is the persistency of not taking no as an answer.
Yeah. I mean, presumably there's a version of that could have been a page of dialogue to do the work of one foot going into one door.
Yes.
I'm nearly out of time, and so I just have to cite the fact that Stranger Than Fiction is an absolute masterpiece. And I'm a huge fan of the film. I just wonder, can you tell me just one story about Stranger Than Fiction? I mean, that's as intelligent as my question gets, but I just came to that cold as well. And
I tell you a funny story. There was a moment, I casted Will Ferrell in the role, and because I thought comedically he was fantastic, and dramatically I hadn't seen him done work like this before. But I thought, let's go on this journey with him. And I love Will. And we were shooting one day, and there was an emotional scene. And I just wasn't happy. I just didn't feel right. I didn't believe it. And I was talking to him. We're doing numerous takes. We're like on take 10. And I'm not there, and I'm still not feeling it. So I asked Dustin Hoffman. I said, look, you need to help me out here. I'm not getting what I want from Will exactly. Can you do something about this? So Dustin goes and talks to him a little bit in that chat, and then Dustin says, let's shoot. We're good to go. So I shoot the scene, and suddenly there's the moment. He's there. I felt it's truthful. It's what I wanted. And then I said to Dustin, well, what did you tell him? I said, we're just talking, and he suddenly said to me, I really wish my dad would be here to see this. And Dustin said, that's the emotion you should use in the scene. To wish that your dad would see this right now. And he used this, and it worked. So then, so he used this, and I got that moment I wanted. And then Dustin went to him after the take and said to Will, and that's the good part about it, says, so I'm so sorry, when did your dad pass? And Will looks at him and said, oh no, he's not dead. He's in Florida. I just wish him to be here and see me act with you and be directed by Marc.
Wonderful. Marc Forster, we are out of time, sadly. It's been an absolute delight. Huge congratulations on A Man Called Otto, and thank you again.
Thank you, Simon. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
And that was my conversation with Marc Forster. A Man Called Otto is in UK cinemas again on the 6th of January 2023, so just at the time this podcast is being released. And that brings me to the end of this particular special episode of Film Stories. There will be an upcoming special episode coming shortly as well, with writers Penn Densham and John Watson, writer-producers of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves and Backdraft, and that's been recorded. That will be heading your way soon. And the regular episodes of Film Stories are going to be up and running again shortly after the Christmas break. If I've not bored you completely, however, you can find more from me on Twitter at Simon Brew, more from the entire Film Stories project there at Film Stories. Our website, filmstories.co.uk, is updated every weekday with movie news, reviews, features, things like that. If you go to store.filmstories.co.uk, that's where you can buy our print magazines, Film Stories and Film Junior magazines. And finally, if you go to the likes of facebook.com/filmstories online and youtube.com/filmstories, you'll find more mischief from us there as well. Most important thing, as always, though, is that you're all safe and well and keeping well as well. I'll be back soon with your regular episode of Film Stories. Until then, you all look after yourselves, you all take care, and thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.